It's gone up just because it's farmland. So I would say when the Land Commission came in '73, you could probably buy an acre of land for $500 or something like that. Today, you'd probably pay $30,000 to $50,000, and that's still farming. Now, it is a big gambling thing there because it isn't perfect. We've got the line there, but the new government will come in and they don't like the idea. They like to say growth is more important than food, so they start going into it. One thing is that if you've got the public, we did a poll, 85% of the public stand behind the ALR. So once somebody touches the farmland, you get a very good response, so it stops there. But if you could take your farmland, we just had some land taken out in Abbotsford. It was $50,000 an acre. As soon as it comes out, it goes to $250,000 an acre for development. So you can also understand why somebody wants to do that. And we had a philosophy, of course, and it's the same here, I'm sure, that farmers for years, this is their retirement package. Now, if you look at the price of that land as a farmer, I think you're going to walk away with a few million as a farm. It's just the biggest struggle now is to get somebody to buy it, to be able to farm. So. It's farmers won't like me saying this, but because it sounds the elitist group. But you have to make a decision if if food production is important. You'll always get the person saying, we want to build. Where are we going to build the houses? That's not the first question. That's the trick question. The first question has to be, how are you going to feed your population? Now, with the figures of the world, and if you do enough research, it scares you a little bit. Now, it may be okay to take the land, and so those farmers are going to be happy. But what we had to do was, we couldn't just go to the farmers and say, we're taking it over. At the time it started, the farmers were probably the most people that rebelled against it, because again, we were taking their retirement package away. So the government said, we will form an income assurance program. And they worked with the farmers, and they set up a system for each commodity, and they had a formula. And if they dropped below that, they would subsidize them. I hate the word subsidize. It was support food. That's basically what it was doing. But what happened after the farmers bought into it, and even though they were going up and down with it, it lasted for about 6 years. So they were really buying the farmers into the ALR. Then they gave them a lump sum of fund for each commodity and said, it's yours. You can advertise to do it. We're backing out of that. And that's how it was done. So you're right. You can't just walk into the farming community and say, we're going to take your land. You've got to be a team. You've got to go in there and say, you're important for food supply. We're going to help you to supply, help to supply it. So you're right. You just can't take it over. You have to be part of it, realizing that food is so important that you're going to help protect the farmer, make sure they can do it. Well, if you're farming it and you have to produce so much per acre, like income, gross income, you get a really low rate for the land basis. So you get what we call farm class. Now, for anybody that owns a piece of agricultural land reserve land, whether you're farming it or not, you pay half the school taxes. So the government did say, look, this is important to produce our food. Therefore, we're going to, anybody who keeps the ALR, and so you're restricted to what you can do with it. You can live on it, but you can't build on it because that commission will not allow you to change it to uses. So there's a farm class that's a good low price for anybody who's truly farming. And if you step out of that and you buy a piece of land, then you pay a much higher rate. There is a question now, like the farmers said, oh, we should raise the amount of income before you get farm class. But you have to question, once you're a dairy farmer and you're worth maybe $3 or $4 million with your quota and everything, should you be getting some help from the government then? Shouldn't it be really to help people to start farming? But you can't touch that one, you know, the farmers are hanging, right? But it is a question about the farm system. But it's a low farm class, so it's a farm classification you have, but you must produce food on it. So. Yeah, they do. They are taking, they're after gravel, and especially where I live, the reason the raspberries are so good there, we have a gravel bottom, so it's good drainage, what they need. But they do go into the area, and they have to have a complete plan by an agrologist how to take the topsoil off, and they take the gravel out, and they will lower the farm. And it's been quite successful. So there is a process. They can't just charge in and take over it, no. So you have to come up with a plan that you're not going to ruin the land. There's always a question, of course, once you disturb the soil, and it may change it. But you know, I could show you photos of good farms where they've actually made it better, because you get these gravel hills in there and they've leveled it all and they put the soil over the back and top. It takes a couple of years before it to come back, but it works very well. Easier for a farmer to farm it even so. Yeah, and that was one of the reasons I was showing how you improve the land, because that was always the issue, that somebody would purposely leave it, and you'll see it flooded. But once you put the drain tile in, you can see the difference. And most of our vegetable lands in this, what we call the Cloverdale area, where peat soils, it's all pumped out. So and it's the highest producing area we have for vegetables. Just one thing, there's lots of things that went on while they were doing this, and they were still pleasing the farmer as much as they can. An example, somebody who's farmed been there 50 years, and suddenly the land reserve came in, they loved the community. So we had a thing called a Home Site Severance Act. And so that person could prove that they lived there, they were the farmers, they were allowed to subdivide off 1 acre. So they stayed in the community. So they kind of respected that. It wasn't just you're out, you know, if you can't farm, you're out. So they did that for a while. It's not very often now, because you know, the Act's been in there for 37 years. On the environmental side, we had lots of fights with environment because they always want more from the farmer and never willing to pay for it. We had a lot of problems with riparian zones, which is the edge of the rivers. You know, we have a big important salmon industry there, but they always want more. We're not willing to pay it, but you can work it out. We have groups that's called a Farmland Wildlife Trust in one area, and that area I was showing you where they develop the land, and they work together. They work together to develop hedgerows. They work together to put lure crops, because we have a lot of migratory birds coming through. So they work it rather than just saying you bear it. So I think the way it works is to work with the farming community. In the green wedge, I would say it's probably the closest to the ALR, right, in the sense that you're protecting it. And I worked long enough in government that I worked for every type of right and left wing. It didn't matter, center. It's interesting that they can't accept that food is number one. Very rarely do we get in the throne speech that we will ensure we get a healthy food supply for our people of British Columbia. They don't do that. They just take it for granted. And I think, like you were mentioning before about, it's only mentioned like, 400 some times in somewhere else, in Chicago, and 3 or 4. We had the same thing. But once you get the public on side, I must say the awareness thing was the biggest thing I realized. That when you get them on side, that there's, what's the saying of Mahatma Gandhi was, public opinion will keep a society pure and healthy. And I learned that if you've got the people on side, they understand it, they'll just make sure the government does what you want. So it's a big step. You're right where we were at least 20 years ago. I'm not saying you're behind Canadians, you know, but I'm just saying that you're right at that stage, and it was exciting seeing it. Sad because I think, and you're going to lose a bit more yet, but you can just see this is the time now to start. And sorry, getting back to your capability, you have to have that to prove it's good farmland. And so once you have that map, then it's easy to defend. But if you don't have it, it's all over the place. You can't fight 1-to-1. We have a Canadian land inventory, which is the whole of the Canada's soil ratings. And so we use that to start with, and then you get what you call fine-tuning right into the BC. So we spent quite a bit of money going around looking at the ALR and making sure the right soils were there as we protected. So.